everyone. Welcome to today's video. It is Wednesday, January 12th. And it is a balmy January day. It's +2. And I am walking northbound on the west side of Yonge Street, going north from Finch to Steeles. It is roughly 12:30 in the afternoon. And this is the fourth leg of my walk up Yonge Street. So I have 3 other videos that will be posted before this one, of course, that are all walking on Yonge Street, starting at Lawrence. What happened when I was doing that walk, the intent was to record from Lawrence all the way to Steeles in 4 separate videos. But as I was about 10 minutes into my 4th walk, which would have been this walk from Finch to Steeles, my camera died. I lost my juice. So I had other things planned between that video and today's walk, so I wasn't able to get out and conclude my walk up Yonge Street until today, January 12th. And part of the reason why I did this Yonge Street walk was to celebrate my 33rd anniversary living in Toronto. And today, as a matter of fact, January 12th, 33 years ago today at 5:30 in the afternoon, my plane landed in Toronto. And the intent was to live in Toronto between 2 and 5 years, just because I wanted to check out someplace new, and I wanted actually a leg up on better career opportunities here in Toronto from my area of expertise compared to Calgary was offering. Calgary was offering some okay opportunities, but it was primarily in the oil patch field, and I didn't want to continue working in the oil patch field, so I wanted to diversify and work in HR in other areas. So Toronto will provide me that opportunity. So yeah, as my husband reminds me, it was the last century when I moved. It was in the last century when I moved to Toronto. That does make me sound old. But I'm grateful to be living as long as I've lived. I hope to continue for maybe at least another 20 years, hopefully into my 80s. That would be good. Yeah, so it was such a drag when I was walking last week, and then my camera died. So I just shut off the gimbal, and then I walked to Steeles anyway, because I had an errand to do up there, and David picked me up there. And I thought maybe what I would do was just only do that 10 minutes of that last walk, but it did make sense, so it's best to carry out my mission and conclude the Yonge Street walk to Steeles. So I'm happy to be doing that today. I hope you've had the opportunity to look at some of my BC videos that I did. David and I were out there for family Christmas. Sorry folks, it's pretty windy, and I hope it doesn't interfere. If it does, I apologize. If it doesn't interfere with the audio. So this is like at least the second time I've come up this stretch in the last week. The first time I did this walk was 30 years ago in 2019. to recognize 30 years living in Toronto, and that was exactly half my life. I moved here just before 30, or just before I turned 30. So I did that walk, but that was before I did video walks. So these videos should hopefully go out. There should be 4 of them. They should hopefully go out over the next 10 days. I have to still edit and upload. And then I have another walk planned. I'm going to do another series of a long walk, you know, different stages along the way. So there's a couple of spots I'm thinking about, but it's going to be weather permitting rather. I was out on Saturday with a friend, and we met. So I walked from my house to Avenue in Dundas, met my friend, then we walked up to Bloor, and then we walked in and around Bloor. So other than a 20-minute sit down with a coffee, we sat outside and had a coffee for 20 minutes before we got too cold on Saturday. But we were on our feet, and then I walked home and she walked home, and so we were on our feet for about 5 hours that day. I was pooped. I was tired, and it was cold. It was cold on Saturday. And then Sunday, I went out again for about 2 hours to run an errand, and it was a much nicer day as far as temperature. And then Monday, I went out again, and it was cold on Monday. I can't remember. I think it was -10. But I was well dressed, and went to the shelter. So that was about an hour-and-a-half walk, and it was cold. But you know, if I'm dressed well, it's fine. So I took yesterday off, which was Tuesday, and just did things that I need to do at home. And I'm grateful for that, because it was, as you know, it was really cold. It was -20. And my husband David went for a walk with a friend. And because normally they play squash together, but as you know, the clubs are shut now, so in order to get a little bit of exercise, they go for walks, come rain or shine. And yeah, too bad it happened to be a day that it was as cold as it was. So when he came home after that hour and a half, he was a bit chilled. Okay, we're at Drewry and Yonge. So as you can see, looking up, it is overcast. It's a typical gray day in Toronto in January. And I remember it took me a few years to get used to these gray winter days in Toronto. Coming from Alberta, we rarely ever got gray days. It could be -30, but it would be blue skies and sunny. So it was a bit of an adjustment, and I remember saying to a friend, how can you live you know, in this dreary, it's so dreary and sad. Like, don't you get depressed or sad? And, you know, it's like water off a duck's back to a Torontonian. When you're used to it, you're used to it. And after a while, you learn to appreciate it. And that's exactly how I feel. When I say you, I'm referring to me, of course, but I really did learn to appreciate these gray days. I went from really disliking them to really enjoying them. There's something about these days that I find soothing. I'm not sure what it is, but I do like these days. So how I got to my start point today of Yonge and Finch, David drove me up. I went to drive my car because it needs some exercise. But anyhow, kind of forgot that I had planned to do that. So David drove me, dropped me off at Yonge and Finch. He's meeting me up at Yonge and Steeles, where this video will conclude. And the reason, one big reason why I am coming this far north on Yonge is because when I first moved to Toronto 33 years ago today, I lived with a friend for about a week, and then I moved. I had found a place to live permanently, but it wouldn't be available for another 6 weeks. So then I moved in with my friend's aunt, and I lived in a basement apartment for 6 weeks. So I rented that for 6 weeks. And so this stretch I know because she lived, or where I lived, was on Madawaska Avenue or street or road. It's just slightly south of Steeles on the east side. And when I didn't have anything to do, or on the weekend, my friend was busy because I only knew one person in Toronto at the time, and it was January after all. I wasn't that inspired to get out and explore much at that point. I was still adjusting to being away from Calgary, my family and my friends. So I remember going to Centre Point Mall and sort of hanging out in the mall and poking around the stores and sitting and having a coffee. And I used to go to the Douglas Snow Aquatic Center. I don't know if it's still called that. It was new at the time, 30 years ago. 33 years ago, it was new. I think it had just recently opened when I moved to Toronto. And I remember being thrilled because it was an Olympic length pool. So I used to swim in, I think it was a 30 meter maybe? Can't remember what the average pool length was, but that was before the Olympic-sized pools were starting to be incorporated in facilities, swimming pool facilities, community centers. And when the Douglas Snow Aquatic Center, which is just south of where we are, have we reached it yet? Yeah, I think we passed it, but remember being thrilled and going into to swim in that pool, and it was beautiful and new, and 50 meters. I think that's the Olympic length. And the washrooms and the shower facilities were really nice. I used to go swimming there a couple of times a week, I think Saturdays and Sundays. Because I didn't really do too much until I started to venture a little bit more. And then I used to take the car and drive down to Harbourfront and park and pay for parking and then wander around Harbourfront, because that was a cool place to be for Calgarian, because Calgary didn't have places like Harbourfront. So I remember spending time down there. And then when I moved out of the home just up here, when my apartment became available, it was an apartment on Broadway Avenue. So that's right at Yonge and Eglinton. And that's when I started stretching my legs and exploring the neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. I found it, it's nice up here, but it wasn't the vibe I was looking for. Yonge and Eglinton was the vibe I appreciated at the time. So moving out of this location down to Yonge and Eglinton about 6 weeks after I moved to Toronto, I just felt like I was flowering at that point. I was getting out more, and so that would have brought me to beginning of March, I think. And then, yeah, I moved into my apartment. It was a bachelor apartment. Yeah, it must have been beginning of March or around March sometime. And then a friend of mine came to visit me for my birthday in March, turning 30. So she flew in from Calgary to help me celebrate, so I wasn't alone. And I remember having a nice time. And I remember we found a place to go. I think it was like a nightclub, or I don't remember, but anyhow, we drove, and it just happened to be like on Eglinton, and I lived 2 blocks north of Eglinton. It was Eglinton Mount Pleasant or something like that, and it was a chicken deli, actually, what used to be called the Chicken Deli, which is just south of Eglinton on Mount Pleasant. I don't think it's not still there. I think there is a venue there, but it's not called the Chicken Deli. Anyhow, we drove there, and I couldn't believe that we drove there because I didn't know where it was. And I looked at a map. We both looked at the map, but thought, well, we don't know how far that is. I don't know, we clearly weren't thinking. And driving there, and then, which was like a 2-minute drive, and then we had to find parking. Like, how crazy was that? So when I moved here, as I mentioned, it was just down this street, and that's Madawaska Avenue, I think. And right across there, that's a funeral home, but that where the parking lot is across the street, that used to be like a strip mall. Remember, there was a hardware store there, and apparently it burned down. Well, it did burn down because I remember seeing it. I had already, I think, moved out at that point. I moved away from this neighborhood, but I remember hearing about it, and I think I saw it. It was burnt down. And then this was erected. So this has probably been here for, oh geez, I don't know, 30 years maybe? Slightly less than 30 years. So David mentioned that he read that here, the Center Point Mall, which is where we're at, is apparently coming down. It's going to be torn down to make way for condos with commercial ground level. So maybe there'll be a bay there again, and maybe there'll be independent shops and so forth. But you can see this whole corner here is occupied by Center Point Mall. It does take up a lot of space, and they're only a few stories high. So by Toronto standards, it's not high enough. So they will tear down and rebuild, and probably make this whole section here a lot taller, multiple stories, probably 30 to 50 stories, based on what I'm seeing today, particularly in the Yonge and Eglinton area. But I don't know if that is happening or when that's happening. But we'll continue to Steeles, and you can see how vast this corner area of Center Point Mall, how much it occupies. It does occupy a lot of territory, a lot of real estate. So it's all about building up, not out. I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope if you were outside yesterday that you were warm enough or not out for too long. Bay. I did a video up in this neighborhood, actually more behind this east stretch of Yonge. So I walked down Madawaska and then sort of in through some of the side residential streets, and then I think I came out on Steeles, and then that's where I concluded my video. Probably the same spot where I'm going to conclude today's video. Yeah, a lot's happened in the 33 years that I've been in Toronto, and I'm very grateful and thankful for everything the city has provided me. It wasn't a cakewalk. I worked hard, but I reaped my rewards. Good jobs, and made some good friends, and best of all, met my husband. Oh, there's David. He's waiting for me like a dutiful husband. So here we are, folks, concluding today's video in recognition of my 33rd anniversary here living in Toronto, 33 years ago today. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for celebrating this special day with me. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. This is Boomer Girl Walking, signing off.